Hello and welcome to the latest video for our student network. Today I'm joined with Sofia, who is a PhD student and is here to tell us all about university life. So Sofia, would you like to tell us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Sofia. I'm a physics PhD student at University College London, and what I work on right now is we look at quantum physics, which is the description of the smallest objects in nature, and we're currently interested in how we can use these systems to measure gravity, and that has both industrial applications and very deep science applications. So, and I'm really enjoying it, and thank you very much for inviting me to do this video.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for being here. How did you find quantum physics? How did you know that was what you wanted to do?
I think so. So that's one of the standard courses you have to do as undergraduate. And I did the first course and wasn't really into it, but then I did a slightly more advanced course, and it was the one topic that I kept getting back to. So I really enjoyed the lectures. I had a fantastic lecture, and whenever I would Google something in my spare time, it would not always be on physics, but if it was a topic in physics, it would be that. And then eventually I learned more and more about it, and I did my master's project on it. And at that point, I had so much fun that I wanted to do a PhD. And so at the end, so in the middle of my fourth year, I did the PhD applications, and I applied to what's known as a Centre for Doctoral Training. And that means you apply to do a one-year master's and then a 3-year PhD on that, but they actually pay you to do the master's, which is quite nice.
Yes.
So it's like a job, but then it's followed by the PhD. And then for the PhD, so that entire topic was delivering quantum technologies is the title, and so I ended up working in this area, and I really enjoy it. Yes.
Excellent, fantastic. So right at the very beginning, how did you first get ready for uni?
So I think most of it was actually the moving part, because I had to pack and so on. But in terms of, and I think psychologically that was the main part. But in terms of the visual impairment and what that meant, how I wanted to interact with university, in terms of that, I got ready by essentially contacting the university very early. So when I applied through UCAS to do my undergrad, I ticked a box saying I have a visual impairment and I have a disability, and I got an email from the disability officers from the various universities. And the ones where I did an interview, I arranged to also see the disability officer. And I did my undergrad at Imperial College London, and I remember, so when I had the interview, I also had a meeting with them, and they told me what kind of support they offered. It was more a get-to-know-you meeting, and I think the main preparation was just thinking about what I might encounter at university. So trying to consider the various elements of physics is lecture courses and practicals. So the practicals are labs, and I was trying to foresee what I needed for each of them. Yes.
Okay. Is there any way that you would recommend students get ready for those meetings? Is there anything that perhaps you took with you or questions that you asked that were really helpful?
Right, so I think the most important thing is that you can communicate your disability. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy to say to someone, I'm visually impaired, and they go, oh, so you can't see well. But what that actually means is it can mean very, very different things. So for me, I usually say I'm very short-sighted, and people tend to understand that in a quite intuitive way, that I need to get close to things. But if you can't see at all, that changes things quite drastically compared to, so you have to take different things into account. So I think it's very important to communicate to the university that this is what I can do, and this is where I anticipate I might need support. So I think it's very important to sit down and have a think about how they can help you, because that instills confidence with them, that they can know how to help you best. But it also means that often universities are not specialized on your specific disability. And that also means that you have to explain to them what you can and cannot do, essentially. So I think that's the most important thing, that you know how to explain your own disability. Yes.
Thank you. So when you were looking at universities to apply to, how did you select your university? Is there anything that you would recommend students look for?
So I think the most important thing actually is that you find a course you like. So it doesn't. I think the visual impairment is very important, but in this case it should be secondary. So you should go for something, the topic you really enjoy, something you want to learn more about, and a city where you want to live. Absolutely, those are two things. In terms of looking for university with regards to your disability, I think it's important to see how they reach out to you or how they respond to you when you reach out to them. And gut feeling is probably a bit important in the sense that if they are very forward and are very approachable and want to help you actively, I think that's a really, really good sign. Maybe something that could also help you is ask them whether they've had other students with a visual disability do the course. This doesn't necessarily matter, but if this has happened, the university will be confident that they can help you. And I think that sets the expectation just a little bit higher. But sadly, that's not very common. And so I think the most important criterion is really that you enjoy the course, and then hopefully, and then everything should work out from there.
Yeah. Excellent. Do you have any general advice for people who are currently going through the application process?
Just the one advice is to contact the university as soon as possible, because everything takes time. It takes time for them to liaise with the department. It takes time for the tutors, for the undergraduate admissions tutor to get to know you and to maybe work out what kind of support you need. It takes time for them to get things in place, to talk to the lecturers, to talk to the lab administrators. And so the earlier you contact them, the better. That's the one advice, yes.
Be proactive and make
Absolutely,
those
yes.
Fantastic, thank you. So for university, where do you feel the biggest challenges are for VI students?
So I think it's, especially for me as well, is what I call the information gap, because we take in information visually many times. Is by far the easiest way for sighted people to learn things, and then there will always be a gap between the information you can take in and what a fully sighted person can take in. And that can appear in many different ways. So for example, I can't usually see the board in a lecture theatre or in a seminar. That means that I can't necessarily obtain the information that the other students are obtaining. And that means that I could potentially get less out of the lectures. In terms of practicals, I might not be able to see the key physics detail or the key chemical reaction that you want to look at. And so there is a gap between just the amount of information you can acquire in the same amount of time. And I think that's the biggest challenge, to try and figure out ways in which you can narrow this gap, because often it's about just finding the conditions in which you can function optimally. So for me, I can improve the rate at which I can learn by, for example, having textbooks as PDFs. Because then I can enlarge the text. And I actually, this was quite fun when I started to study physics. They recommended this giant textbook for us, and I got it because I was like, oh yeah, why not? Got a second-hand copy. But when I tried to lift this to hold it close to my eyes, I couldn't do it because it was so heavy. But then the university helped me by getting a PDF. So they scanned the book, the library scanned the book, and I got a PDF, and I then could use that on my screen and learn from that. And that was great.
Perfect. So how did you find what support was out there and what worked best for you? Was it all trial and error?
So it was a little bit of trial and error. So I actually met a student who had done my exact course before me, and he told me the key thing, that he had used a small screen and a camera in the lectures, and then he streamed the content of the board with the camera onto the screen, and then he could follow the board, the lecture process in real time. And I think that was key for me, because I didn't want to go to the lectures and just sit there and not be able to follow them, because that would be a waste of time. I also didn't want to look at video feeds afterwards or read notes, because you sometimes firstly, it regiments your schedule to actually go to the schedule lectures, and you can also ask questions if you want to. So talking to the student was really, really helpful. But then it was also a matter of just trying different things and seeing whether they worked out for me. So I tried 2 different camera systems to see which one worked best. I tried also having, at first I didn't have a note taker, for example, but then when they offered it to me, I went, oh, why not? And then it turned out that was really helpful, because if you have a camera, that's a limited battery life, and I'm not perfect, so sometimes I would forget to charge the camera, and that meant it wouldn't work during a lecture, and then I missed out on the lecture. So having that, so the note taker was a PhD student who would sit in the lecture and take notes of the lecture content in case the lecturer themselves didn't give out material to us. And that was really helpful, actually, because the PhD student has done the course themselves usually, or a similar course, and they will often know more than you do at the time. So the explanations I got from them were great as well, as a bonus.
They almost act as a mentor, as kind of.
Yes, a little bit. So I didn't have personal contact with them, but the notes I got sometimes were absolutely brilliant. So I think it's about talking to other students who've done a similar course to what you have, and I just figuring things, trial and error, really. So the university has a set of standard things they can offer to you, but often and sometimes these things might not be optimal for you. And so I think it's important to have that flexibility and to be able to say to the university, hey guys, this isn't working, because sometimes you can feel that, oh, but they put this in place for me, that's I should be grateful. But it's all about trying to optimize your time at university, because it's about, so you have to be a bit egotistical in the sense that you've earned a place at university and you're paying money to be there, and it's about you gaining the skills that you want to gain during this time and doing it in the optimal way. Absolutely.
So with regards to the support that was directly available from the university, what would you say you appreciated the most?
So I definitely appreciated as I mentioned, the note taker. That was great. I had some extra time in exams, that really helped me a lot. And they would also enlarge exam papers for me, which was great. I also got to sit in a room of my own, I think not to bother the other students when they left and I would stay, because that would be weird. So that was really helpful. The university actually also gave me my preferred choice of hall. So in London universities, because it's really hard to know the housing market before you move to London, they usually give you a place in a hall for the first year. And what Imperial did is they asked me, would you like to live close to campus? Because they have some halls close to campus and some further away. And then to avoid having to find my way to uni and avoiding that confusion, because my sense of location is terrible, which I don't think is entirely related to the disability. I think that's, I use that as an excuse. But the Imperial offered me to stay in a hall close to uni, and I think that really helped as well. Just when making sense of things in the first year. Yeah.
Was there actually anything within the halls or within your room that made things particularly easier, or that you would have liked differently?
Right. So for me, so adjustments in daily life are minimal for me. I'm quite mobile in terms of that, and the only adjustments I need are enlargements on my computer and a screen on the monitor arm. The hall was north facing because I have albinism. I'm very sensitive to sunlight. So I think this was, I can't remember if I asked for this, but it was quite helpful that the window in my room was north facing, which means the sunlight wasn't direct, and that was quite nice. In terms of anything different, there's not really anything I can think of immediately, so I might get back to you on that if I think of something. Yes.
How about your lecturers and tutors then at university? Is there anything that you wish they were more aware of, perhaps?
So I don't think so. So I went to, I tried to be very open with the lecturers and communicate with them. So every year I would write a letter for the lecturers and send it to the course administrator, and she would then send it on to the lecturers. And in this letter I would say, hi, I have a visual impairment. I'm using a camera in class. Please don't be intimidated by this, essentially, and I'm not filming you. I have a genuine reason for using the camera. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Here's my email. What I also did, after each first lecture, I would go down and speak to the lecturer, say, hi, I'm the one who sent the email. As you can see, I'm using my camera. I hope that's okay. And I had genuine, across the board, very positive feedback from this. They were all saying essentially, yes, absolutely fine. If you need anything, please let me know. However, so that was great. However, I think that is I had a good experience because my approach was to, as much as possible, make sure that I was independent of their help. Because in early school, I had the experience that when you try and ask someone to change their teaching style, that is probably not going to work. Because it's a very intuitive process to teach. So I've done some teaching as part of the PhD now, so I know this. You have your personality when you teach, and it's very hard to deviate from that. And so I tried to make sure that I could function as independently as possible in the lectures and in the labs, so that I wouldn't have to rely on someone else getting things right. I have the luxury of doing that because I could have the camera and I sometimes have a small binocular, but that also means that in my professional context now, I can now go to conferences without having to out myself as a visually impaired person. I can just go, I use the binocular and I don't care, what people might think is weird, but I don't care about that. And by doing that, I can again access this information without having to rely on someone else. And that's very nice to be able to do that. But I think that also helped in having a very smooth relationship with the lecturers. Yes.
Okay. So looking back, is there anything you wish you knew before university, or is there anything that you learned along the way that you wish you'd learned earlier?
Right, so I think in terms of physics, what I realised as I did in university is that it would probably be quite hard for me to do experimental physics professionally as a PhD student or a postdoc. This is mainly, so while I did my undergraduate degree, I asked some of the lecturers. I think I asked the theorists, which is probably why I got the answer I got. So their response was, most experiments are done with computers nowadays. If you can use a computer, because they're so large, if you can use a computer, you could probably do experimental physics. Now, that's true for some experiments. So you have the giant particle accelerators, for example, where I think they actually have genuine engineers do the actual hands-on part. But also for other experiments, you can do a lot with computers. So there is a certain availability there. But in terms of, for example, quantum physics experiments, where we are dealing with very, very small objects, like individual atoms and so on, the labs tend to be extremely finicky. It's all about fine-tuning, it's about aligning lasers. The labs also tend to be quite messy because there's no, creative process often, and there's no regimented, there's order in the chaos. But my exposure to labs and more advanced labs allowed me to see this essentially. And in the beginning of the degree, I did quite a lot of experimental courses or more practically oriented courses. But later on, I also became more interested in the theoretical side, but I also acknowledged that I probably could not work in these lab environments because you have to be extremely precise in what you do. And you wouldn't want me to be in the lab. No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so in addition to the academic side,
yes.
What are some of the other challenges that students face in life in general more?
So I think beyond the very academic side, I think for me it was definitely navigating. So I'm quite independent in my movements, but again have very bad sense of location, and it's not made better because I can't really see signs and I struggle to read a map. So one big thing for me when I went to uni was to get A's. So it was back then when smartphones just became a thing. feels like ages ago, but it wasn't actually that long ago. But then I got a smartphone with a GPS on it, and I think especially when moving to London, that really helped me, because that gave me the mobility to also go to other places in London. I was fortunate enough that the campus was really small, so I had essentially only one lecture theatre, but I think navigating across the campus can be a problem for some, and I've heard of cases where people have very nice classmates who just drag them along to all the different lecture theatres. For my MRS actually at University College London, that was sometimes the case, that because we would be shuffled around the campus, even if it's a small campus, they have many different seminar rooms, shall we say. So that was a bit of a challenge, but otherwise, apart from certain practical aspects in life, for example, London is a great place to live in terms of public transport. So I'm not allowed to drive, which is a problem if you were to live in smaller cities. But in the bigger cities, and universities tend to end up in bigger cities just because of the connectivity and such, public transport in London is really great, and I've enjoyed that a lot. That gives you a lot of freedom. Yes.
Yeah. And outside of classes, what was there available for you to get involved with at uni?
Oh wow, so there was loads. I think Imperial always boasts that they have around 300 student societies, which is insane. So there were so many sports things, all the arts, and various course-related societies. But what I'm really keen on, so I really enjoy classical music. So what I did when I went to uni, I joined the choir. And I'm fortunate enough that I can actually sight read music when I hold it really close. And for that choir, it was recommended to sight read. But there were also other choirs where you didn't have to do that. And I enjoy that a lot. I've been in that choir for maybe 5 years now. And I also was involved in the Chamber Music Society. And as I played the piano, and I also helped run the society later. So we arranged concerts, we had meetings, we had conducting classes, for example, to put on workshops for members. And I massively enjoy that because you can pursue your hobby. I met lots of great people. I also then, in my final year, I helped organise I organised a week-long arts festival at Imperial, which comprised I don't remember how many, but more than 5-6 events every day, so around 30 events that entire week, and that was lots of fun. And so what I say is it's really good for your CV to have done something like this. So you apart from just enjoying yourself, you can also show that you have the skills to organise events and so on. But I think it's also important to remember that if you have additional challenges in doing your course, you have to weigh putting in more effort into your course material against doing all of these fun things. And so you shouldn't, that's probably a bit of social pressure to get organised or to get involved into these societies. I had some people who were part of maybe 5, 6, 7 societies, absolutely crazy. And that's a personal choice, so you shouldn't feel pushed or pressured to join them, but you have to make the assessment yourself whether you want to have fun or whether you want to focus on your work. And sometimes having fun is more important. Absolutely, it depends what your goal with your university education is. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so there sounds like there's loads of benefits for getting involved in these kind of things.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you would recommend to kind of really get a well-rounded experience and get the most out of uni?
Right, I think it really depends on what you want to do afterwards. So if you want to go the more academic route, your grades are important. However, if you're seeking to get a more holistic perspective on things, then I think just honing those skills, writing skills, report writing skills, keeping to deadlines, organising yourself, because in school you're quite spoon-fed in terms of information, and you're set homework for the next day and so on. No one's going to tell you that in uni. We had certain problem sheets that we had to complete, maybe one every 2 weeks. But apart from that, it's really up to you to follow the course material. So I think it's a really good experience to also figure out the way you learn best. So it took me maybe a year to realise that the way I learn best is to write my own notes. So some people just read things, some people do the calculations or to write things again. So for me, it was writing things again and writing them in my own words. That was the best thing. So I think that's a really key thing that you can figure out. And then also to gain a social network of friends. I still have friends from first year, and it's really nice. But then also to gain certain opportunities to try things you haven't tried before, to also push your limits a little bit. And that can be a bit scary. I mean, the entire thing can be scary because you're moving to a new city, you're joining this course, and it can be intimidating and daunting. But it's a bit of a grand adventure. And I think if the support is there for you, and as long as you're enjoying it, something is going right. So yeah.
Fantastic. So obviously you've come a really long way throughout university.
Yeah, I've been there forever. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything in particular that you would say was key to your success, or maybe something that you think you'll carry forward into work and whatever you do next?
So I think that's really so in science, in research, creativity is often quite undervalued. It might appear like you're just doing lots of technical stuff all the time, but the key thing is having ideas and developing them. And I think in university, you're still somewhat spoon-fed tasks and information and so on, but there's a lot of room for creativity. So certain tasks, I remember there was a programming task we had to do, and they had a set of preset problems, and you could work through those. But I went to the seminar leader, the leader of the course, and asked, hey, I have this idea for a slight variation of this project, can I do that instead? And that was absolutely fine. And I think in the assignment, I got extra points for creativity, which I appreciated that.
Yeah.
That was nice. So I think finding these spots or openings for creativity is really important. Probably also for your future, work life in industry. And I think that's something you can definitely develop during these years. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. So Sofia has a website that I will make sure is linked in the group for you to have a visit and have a read through. What was the motivation to start that website and blog?
Right, so the motivation, so the website, it tells the story of visually impaired people at university. So the motivation was that when you start going to university, there's a lot of information available about your rights and the official support that the university can offer you. And this support is often quite generalized. So if you have a visual impairment, they will say, more time in exams, a note taker, maybe extended library access and so on. But it's not very tailor-made to specific visual disabilities. And it's also very, there are loads of details that could otherwise be very difficult to find, to come across. And so what we wanted to do is to just collect lots of experience from lots of people and put it on somewhere where it's accessible, where you can see a lot of the tiny tips and tricks that people have accumulated during their time, often through trial and error. And we also wanted to motivate people and show that it is possible to go to university, because when I was little, my parents, when they first learned that I had a visual impairment, they had a lot of questions about what kind of things I would be able to do in life. And it helped them a lot to see that there was someone with a similar visual impairment who had gone to university and enjoyed that experience. And that made it possible for them to see that, yes, this is our child can also do this. So we want to disseminate the information about studying as a visually impaired student, but also to inspire people and say it is possible. It might be challenging, it might be tricky, but here's how you could do it, and here's how some others have done it.
Excellent. So what are the kind of things that people can find on the website?
So we have a number of writers which did with different visual impairments. So we had some blind people, some visually and some short-sighted people, and they all study different things. So we have, for me, physics. We have someone who did computer science, languages. We had creative writing. I have a chemistry student who's about to write something. And what people can find there are stories written by these people in quite a loose format, so they all choose what they talk about. So it could be just general advice or something that's very specific to their course. What we also have is a section with frequently asked questions, which we hope can, if you need a short overview, it will just help you to read that section. And we also collect some links and resources, for example, links to scholarships. There's actually a lot, or quite a few scholarships for example, disabled students in computer science and so on. And it's all collected there, and I encourage you to apply to those. Yeah.
Brilliant. It really is a really valuable website. I highly recommend that you will go and visit. As I say, there will be a link popped just above this video. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think that's all of my questions answered. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. I'll speak to you again soon.